it and trying to.
Aha!
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. I can't believe it. What an extraordinary thing to have happened just now. Hello, everybody. How lovely to see you.
Sarah.
Hopefully a few more will join us. So we'll give them a minute or two. Well, as I said, we'll probably start with some music and to allow people time to join. Oh, and there's Jackie. Great.
It was great. God.
Sarah, you've got your iPad on the screen as well.
Yes, I shall. Thank you.
You want me to stop down too?
No, it's fine.
Look at everybody.
Recognise anyone? Hello, Rosie.
Rosie.
Hello, Nick. Hello, Damo. Hello, Jackie. Hello, Lizzie.
Hi. Hi. Can you push on a bit small?
How many can we do?
Gosh, look at this.
Making space for Patrick.
Who doesn't want it?
I know, therefore.
This is a drinks party, isn't it?
It is a drinks party.
Yeah.
And
I'm waiting for mine.
There's your
Hey, Will.
Oh, Peter, how are you?
I will. Hi.
Peter doesn't recognise you.
I will.
I do. Hello, Will.
I will.
Hello, Will.
What's that more?
now, I am going, it looks like we've got a nice healthy number here. I'm going to mute you all. We'll have a chance to talk again at the end, but we're going to start the fun. So let me mute everybody. There we go. And I'm going to share my screen with you all, and we're going to start with a little bit of music. And what I wanted to show you all really was what some musicians who haven't been able to perform are trying to do to keep their audiences interested. So we're going to start with something called an isolation Odyssey, which I think is rather appropriate really on this first day of a little bit of release. So here we go.
Sarah, you're on mute.
Sarah, you're on mute.
So sorry. That's what I need. That's why I need a co-host, and I haven't got one except for Nigel, who's just come in saying, Sara, you're on mute. So I have to keep remembering to do that, to unmute, sorry, and mute. Okay, so I was saying that was the Orchestra of the Opera North, and that they were supposed to perform that to their usual audiences and weren't able to for obvious reasons. It's actually, as you know, from the Space Odyssey Kubrick, but actually, of course, it was from somebody far more famous than that, Richard Strauss in the 19th century. And it was based on a piece, it was a tone poem that was supposed to be inspired by a Nietzsche story. So there we are. So what I would like to do, having welcomed you all, and thank you all for joining, is to start by saying that I'm going to give our treasurer's report. And Julie Littleker has very kindly given me the information. I'm going to mute you, Corinna and Robin. So Julie has very kindly given me her report. So she says the good news is we have £393.70 in the Chromatics account. At the end of the spring term 2020, we had £531.60 in the bank after taking £1,220 in subscriptions and paying £120 for renting the village hall, and £558.40 in total for our regular pianist, guest and guest conductors. She says that Sara claimed £10 in expenses. Since June 2020, we've been unable, as you know, to have our usual Monday evenings in the village hall, but we've collected £340 in subscriptions towards our Zoom meetings, for which Sara has had £127.90. That is the annual fee with a little bit of music for Zoom, by the way, so that we don't get cut off after 40 minutes, and it allows me to do other whizzy things as well with Zoom. So in expenses, and we have also paid for Caroline, and Caroline's been invaluable at joining us on those meetings that we've had, so worth every penny. Those participating in this March's virtual production, of which you're going to hear tonight, have contributed towards the editing cost and covered that expense in full. So in these last two terms since September, we've not fully covered our costs, being £137.90 out of pocket, but we have been able to cover that with the excess from the previous year. So there you are, the matter of the accounts over and done with. And Gilly says if anybody has any questions to ask her, but please could they be simple questions, and could you get in touch with me via email and I'll pass them on to her. So that is that. So we've got that out of the way. So now what we're going to do is I am going to find, and this is the only thing that's going to slow me up, is looking, I can see Caroline there. So I'm going to ask her to unmute, and I'm going to spotlight her for everybody, which means now Caroline is the one everybody can see. So Caroline, who is our wonderful pianist, is going to talk to us about what it's like giving music lessons at the moment. Thank you, Caroline.
Okay, so I'm a piano teacher, and obviously suddenly a year ago found myself not able to go into schools or have pupils to my house. What was I going to do? How was I going to be able to continue giving lessons to my pupils? Some of which had already paid up for lessons because it was right just before the end of the spring term that everything was locked down. I felt totally bewildered and found the whole idea, because people had been talking about teaching online, completely daunting. How was it going to work? I just had no idea. A good friend helped me out right at the start, and I soon started teaching using my iPad. And that was important because my main computer is in a completely different room to my piano, and it wouldn't have been suitable setting it up on the keyboard. So I used my iPad using Skype or FaceTime, and gradually over the year have become more confident using this platform. There have been problems, internet connections, etc. But overall it has worked far better than I could have imagined. And I've found myself able to Skype pupils in China, in Hong Kong, in Ukraine and Saudi Arabia. Different pupils who go to my schools but find themselves abroad at this particular time. So there has been amazing flexibility. And also only in the last fortnight, I've been looking after my mum, who came out of hospital following an operation. And because she had a piano, I set up my iPad and was able to give my lessons there. So some good flexibility. I've had to make sure that I have copies of all the music that my students are learning from. So that's quite a lot of music that I've had to buy some, quite a lot I already had, but otherwise I wouldn't have been able to teach them. And they've had to see me and my piano, and I've had to see them and their piano. So overall, it has been much more tiring than face-to-face teaching. But I do feel that I've been incredibly lucky to have been able to continue with my work when so many others have not been able to. And, live musicians and all this type of thing. So I do feel that I have been very, very lucky. The children have adapted and coped amazingly well, from the little ones right up to the older ones. And I'm obviously teaching all different standards, from beginners right through to post-grade 8. But I think we're all now ready to get back to face-to-face teaching and have that live interaction, because really it's been a year of online lessons. And as I say, I think we're all ready to get back to face now. So it's been an experience, one that I don't really want to repeat if I don't have to, but we'll see what happens. So hopefully next term I should be going back to my schools and seeing my children face to face again, which will be brilliant.
Wonderful.
So thank you.
Oh, thank you, Caroline. Well, how wonderful that you have, as you say, been able to continue. That's just amazing.
Yeah.
So thank you very much indeed. And we're going to hear from Caroline again right at the end with our very own rhythm of life, which is just what we need. Thank you, Caroline. Okay, so now we're moving on to John Fabre. I just need to find you, John. I can't see you at the moment. Where are you? This is going to be what slows me up, is just looking, but there he is, got him right. Thank you, John. So I am now going to ask you to unmute.
Okay.
Okay, so John is going to talk to us about, he's called his talk 8 Strange Trees in a Sussex Field. And I asked John what he'd like me to introduce him, or how he'd like to be introduced, and he didn't reply. And I'm assuming it's because when I looked on Google to how I should address you, Professor, I realized that, oh my goodness, I almost need to be doing this, but it's wonderful that you're going to talk to us today. So am I right in saying that you're Professor Emeritus at King's College London, that you've had a distinguished career in paediatric cardiology, and you were president of the British Transplantation Society from 1992 to 1995. So an extraordinary career you've had. But I will nonetheless let you get back now to trees. Thank you, John.
Thank you, Sarah. Well, that's a lovely introduction, but irrelevant to my talk. Thanks very much for asking me to contribute this evening. And I didn't mean not to reply to your email. It's just that I must have missed it somehow. Well, the story starts back in 2000 and I'll get rid of. Can I get rid of this thing for a second? There we go. Yeah. Back in 2003, we bought about 25 acres of land adjoining us from the Williamses, which some of you might know, when they decided to give up farming. We did it largely as a precautionary measure to prevent unwanted development around our home here at Hippocrene Farm. But it's turned out to be a lovely way of expanding our horizon and also the horizons of our grandchildren. By 2019, we had acquired somehow 8 grandchildren. The first thing I want to say is that, we decided with this land just to let it go almost completely, just to mow it once a year. And as a result, we've got a few unusual things growing there. But one of our grandchildren at the age of 5 spotted the banded yellow and black caterpillar on the common ragwort, which some of you will know as the caterpillar of the endangered cinnabar moth, which was a lovely experience for him and for the rest of us. But if I come to the 8 trees in my title, we decided to plant 1 tree for each of our grandchildren. And we took inspiration from the trees planted back in the 18th century in Sheffield Park. And all 8 trees that we've chosen are chosen for their large size and their very beautiful autumn colors. 6 of them are native to the east coast of North America, and 1 is native to northern Iran and Azerbaijan. Now, we are no longer young, as you can see. So all the trees that we bought at around 5 or 6 meters in height, which was quite expensive and meant that planting took a lot longer than it might otherwise have done. But around in the late autumn of 2019, when all our grandchildren were here, we decided to start the planting. They all hopped in and contributed in one way or another to this process. And what I've done is I've prepared a little file, a little booklet for each grandchild. That's my 3 minutes, actually. For each grandchild, describing each of the trees and describing their progress in the first year. And we like to imagine that in 100 years' time, these trees will be quite an unusual sight for people walking around Sussex. We like to walk around the trees. It's almost like doing a ward round to make sure everybody is fine at any particular point.
Am I allowed to interrupt, or have we?
Yes. Yes. Well, I think I could leave it there. It's basically a project to create something a bit beautiful and unusual here in Sussex.
Well, we're all going to want to come round and have a look.
You're very welcome.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much. What a wonderful project to have undertaken, and how wonderful to think that your grandchildren may one day see them. Absolutely wonderful. Thank you very much indeed. And I think your introduction was relevant, actually. You referred to a ward round there.
That's true.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Now I would like to ask, so I do need to, I'll mute you, John, there you go. I'm now going to ask Diane. So I am asking Diane to unmute. And I'm going to...
Hi, guys.
Diane, thank you so much. Now, what I'm going to do is share the screen, because Diane, who is a personal trainer and soft tissue therapist, and just an all-round amazing sportswoman, did an extraordinary trip to China, and she raised a significant amount of money for Dementia UK, which the charity was incredibly grateful for. And now, as I say, I'm going to share the screen so that we can see a few of her slides. So Diane, if you say next to me, then I will move on.
Well, that would be great, except I can't remember the photographs I sent you, because we've sent over so many that I can't now remember the last 10. Oh, the best thing for me to do is really just talk about the photographs when I see them, but just a preamble before I start with the photographs. The China trip came about because my mother was diagnosed with dementia, and knowing that I like to do challenges and sports, this challenge came up, and the idea is that you can raise money for whatever charity you want. It was a women's only trip, so and it was following the route of the or some of the Great Wall of China. So if you know, the Great Wall of China is about 3,000 plus miles long. So 500 miles is really only a tiny little snippet of it. But anyway, and I thought, what a great way to raise money for Dementia UK, take on a challenge and visit a country that I would never otherwise perhaps ever have gone to. I certainly wouldn't go back to China as a holiday. If any of you are thinking it is a very strange place. But having said all that, we were ready to go. The training, 500 miles in 5 days. So it's 100 miles a day. It's, as you can see from the first photograph there, it's pretty hilly. So I knew that hills were going to have to be in part of my training. Prior to getting to China, I was in that's the wall, and it just goes on for miles and miles. So we couldn't clearly cycle on the wall itself, because that's actually a good section, but there are quite a lot of sections, if ever you have done it, that literally don't you can't walk on at all. There we are, ready to go with all our bikes lined up. There were 20 of us, 20 girls, so you can imagine what a nightmare that would be, particularly loose stocks every 5 minutes, because girls just need to just stop. So we had to plan that, and we were going through villages that these are just guys just playing some sort of dice games along the way. It's very, very poor. I was staggered at how poor the country is in the rural areas. And there's a lot of unemployment. So these guys would just be sitting, playing, traveling and taking their work wares. And so this area here, by the way, is, you can see it's raining. And we were in an orchard, and the side of the road, you can't see it very clearly there, but there was a lot of milky white substance. And I just remember saying to the doctor, that's coming up the hill at the end, I said, what's all this white stuff at the side of the road? And the doctor said, oh, that's pesticide. And the rain had washed all the pesticide off the flowers and the trees, and it was running like milk. I was quite wet and very muddy at that stage. And so this pesticide, and I couldn't work out, and that's when I realised that's why there were no birds flying. There are no insects for them to eat, so no birds are flying. It was eerily silent. And we just were staggered at the way China had really controlled even the way the bees pollinated the flowers. It was crazy. That was a very bad day, but the farmers never gave up. They kept going. They just kept ploughing their fields, and just as much as they could possibly gain from the earth and the grounds. I'm sure most of us have been to countries now that are less privileged than we are, and we see these workers working so hard. We take our sort of little life for granted, really. So yeah, we made it up to the top of the mountain. There was some pretty hard climbing, maybe 3 mountains a day probably, and we'd get to the top, and when we got to the top, we'd all get off our bikes and dance, and we'd sing around our bikes. I think the Chinese must have thought this was a British culture, because they began to sort of gather around us like some sort of audience. So that became quite fun. We managed to get to some of the Great Wall. This has been a refurbished bit, and the Great Wall is actually segments. It's where the dynasties actually built boundaries of where their dynasty lay. So it's not a continuous wall, which is, I thought it was, but until I got there, I didn't realise. So each boundary would be bigger and greater than the next. Some fantastic views, some staggering views, but not a single bird in sight. No butterflies, favourite paintings. Is that me done?
No, yeah. Sorry. Okay. I didn't mean to cut you short.
Okay, so China was a huge, great experience, and I would literally put that down as one of the top 10 experiences that I've done in my life. For the people I met, for the purpose that it was behind, and for the support I got behind me. It was amazing.
How fantastic. What a wonderful trip to have had. And thank you for sharing those wonderful slides with us too. Absolutely amazing. Thank you, Diane. So I am going to mute you and unfortunately remove your spotlight. There you go. And we're now going to, this is nothing like as slick as the Christmas one. I have to say it's much easier running a webinar than it is a meeting, but there we go. So I hope you'll forgive me. So now I am going to ask Jackie. I'm going to put Jackie Wilkes. There she is. I can see you, Jackie. Going to add you, and I am going to ask you to, or can you unmute yourself?
I have unmuted myself.
Excellent. You're quite quiet at the moment.
Okay, can I hear me now?
Can hear you now.
I can shout into the screen.
So just to introduce Jackie, who this is about the Citizens Advice Bureau during a pandemic. I thought we ought to hear a little bit about the realities out there, really. So Jackie is the district manager of the Lewis District Citizens Advice Bureau, and she's in charge of all the citizens advice activity across the Lewis district. And she's also been a loyal member of the Chromatics too. So let me remove myself, Jackie, and I'll hand over to you.
Hi, everybody. I'm the sort of doom slot, I think, of the evening, but I'll try to be realistic, but not too gloomy. I don't know how much you know about Citizens Advice, but basically we're predominantly volunteer-led. I'm paid. We have a small paid staff, but mainly volunteers. Each office is an individual charity. We don't get central government funding. So part of my job is to make sure we've got enough funding to run the activities in Lewis District. Pre-pandemic, we had 3 offices in Lewis, Seaford and Newhaven, and outreaches in Peacehaven and Telscombe. And from those offices, we had 45 volunteers and about 15 paid staff. This all changed in April last year, and we had to move everybody off-site into to do remote working, which was a bit of a logistical nightmare. Because we had to find laptops, telephones, everything to get people set up from home. But once we did, and the telephones started ringing, we realized that the pandemic wasn't hitting people equally. And the main groups who've been worst hit are the young, up to 30, the BAME community, people who were asked to shield by the government, people in insecure employment, so agency workers, and interestingly, a lot of key workers were also really badly affected. So the sort of thing we saw a new cohort of clients, people who'd previously managed they'd managed on their income, and suddenly, for various reasons, they couldn't make ends meet. Now, this could either be because they were put on furlough, and if you're on a relatively low income, a 20% cut is just going to push you into negative budget at the end of every month. Or for other people, they'd lose their job and they'd have to apply for universal credit. Now, unfortunately, I haven't got time to talk too much about universal credit in my little slot, but it is a very mean benefit, and therefore people who have been used to working and go on to universal credit are going to fall behind and get into debt really, really quickly. So the sort of biggest issues we've seen in the last year are we've had a 143% increase in people applying for universal credit, the sort of benefit they'd apply for when they lost their job. We've seen a 95% increase in employment inquiries. And very sadly, we've seen a huge increase in domestic violence and also relationship breakdowns where domestic violence has been cited as the main cause. So without being too gloomy, what happens next is it's just going to get a whole lot worse, because at the moment we're sort of sheltered, in a way, shielded by some of the government measures. So as the furlough scheme is lifted, so unemployment will go up. As evictions are allowed to happen again, so homelessness will go up. And as bailiffs are allowed to start their activities, so the misery that they cause will also increase. So just to give you some idea of how bad it is for some families, I spoke to a food bank last week, and this time last year they were dealing with 30 families, and this week they're dealing with 120. So it's 120 families who can't afford to feed themselves. Again, in our office this time last year, we only gave out vouchers for food. So we would do an assessment for somebody, and if we felt it fitting, they could get a food voucher. We're now giving out vouchers for food, fuel. Sorry, that's my timer. I'll be very quick. Fuel, food, water, school uniforms, clothes, and household goods. So, you know, we are one of the fifth richest nation in the world, and yet some families can't afford to feed themselves or clothe themselves. And, you know, I think that's pretty sad. So on that rather gloomy note, I'm going to leave you.
Oh, but thank you, Jackie. We need to hear that. We need to hear what it's like for people like you working on the front line, really. So thank you.
Well, I mean, I think, you know, my thanks to you, because coming to Chromatics feeds my soul and lets me carry on doing some of the slightly grimmer stuff I do during the day.
Yeah, well, thank you, Jackie.
Yeah.
Thank you very much indeed.
You.
Well, I am going to now show you what the Chromatics who did join me this term have been working on. I have a few problems sometimes sharing this, so I'm hoping it's going to be okay. So we, as you know, some people stayed on, we were meeting every other week. We've done that pretty much, yeah, all the way through the lockdowns, that's for sure. And we have been working on Brother James's Air, which is a beautiful piece, which I think is a nice slot between the Citizens Advice Bureau and then hearing from Nicky on nursing during a pandemic. And then we're going to lift the mood, so don't worry. But let me find the Chromatics for you. I'm just checking you can all see that, and I know you can. Here we go.
Happy Easter.
Happy
Happy
Easter.
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 Happy Easter.
Happy Easter.
Right.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that. Yes, I think the choir did a fantastic job. And as you can see, there was only one soprano. So we have to thank Lucinda for that, who came in as a single soprano, and always having had such problems finding men for the Chromatics. Good Lord. We just had a wonderful number. So I'm incredibly grateful to all the men as well. We just had a wonderful, wonderful time with that. So thank you very much. And to our lovely altos, 2 altos too. So wonderful. Just wonderful. Right, now I'm going to find Nicky Marmion. Sorry, Nicky, I'm just having to scroll through everybody till I find you. There you are. So there we go. And you're unmuted, I see. So Nicky, started her back to nursing really or you attained it rather, just as the pandemic hit, which is an extraordinary thing to have happened to you, really. So you've got your nursery and midwifery registration just at the time when we went into lockdown last year. And since then, you've been working, or currently you're working as a staff nurse at the Macindoe Centre, and you're doing some bank staffing at the Queen Victoria, and you're also doing some vaccinating at the Mass Vaccination Centre. So thank you, Nicky.
Thank you very much, Sarah. So I basically did my Bachelor of Nursing course, as Sarah was saying, and got my registration back on the day that we went into lockdown. So returned to hospital nursing, having been out of it for a few years, and was a bit like, was a bit of baptism of fire, to be honest. Nursing was already very different to when I'd last worked in a hospital when I was doing my original training, and to then go back and be nursing in a pandemic where everyone was wearing masks and you couldn't tell what anybody looked like because everyone was just completely covered in PPE from head to toe, was all quite challenging and very hard for the patients as well. They weren't allowed to have anyone to come into hospital with them when they did come into hospital. When I first started working at Macindoe, we were the trauma centre for the southeast for plastics under the NHS. So we had anyone who'd had accidents with DIY tools, need I say more, with chainsaws and things and dog bites and all sorts of things, and they were traumatized enough by that, and then they couldn't even have any family members with them while they were going through all their surgeries afterwards. To say it was one of the hardest things I find with wearing masks all day long as well is the fact that it's so difficult to get any non-verbal cues from patients, which is so important when you're nursing. And when you can't see somebody's face properly, you just can't get any of those cues at all. So it makes it incredibly hard. And also when we have nursing the more elderly patients, a lot of them are hard of hearing and they can't communicate very well unless they can see your lips. So it's very difficult communicating with them as well. The patients definitely find the not having any visitors very hard as well. And the technology is in place for some links to be done with families, but some of the older patients find that all too overwhelming as well. The other big impact has been the fact that patients have left things a lot longer than they would ordinarily do. They're scared about going to their GP, so when they do then come to us for surgeries for their lumps and bumps that they think is just a small little bump that's going to be fine, unfortunately it's spread a lot more, so we're seeing much longer stays after their surgery because they've let things go a bit longer, so they'll end up having to have much more treatment and much more cut away and things like that, so that's quite tough on them as well. But it's not all negative. One of the great things that I have been able to do since I started in the end of January this year is, on a positive note, is working at the vaccination centres, which is just so nice to be doing something that's positive that's related to COVID, having been doing so many things that were all negative in the hospital. And after my first few shifts at the vac centre, it was just so nice to be surrounded by people who were just so grateful to be getting their vaccines and literally doing a jig as they were waiting to come into our area for their vaccine, and people bringing in trays of cakes and insisting on giving money and all sorts of things because they were just so grateful that they were finally getting closer to seeing that light at the end of the tunnel. And in fact, I was at the vac centre all day from 8 till 4 today, and that continues to be the case. The thing that's slightly depressing this week is the fact that a lot of the vaccination centres are actually going to be shut down on the 1st of April until the 11th of April because there's just not enough vaccines at the moment with the disruption to the supply. So that's all a bit sad at the moment, but we'll be back out there vaccinating very soon, and hopefully we'll all be out of this mess sooner rather than later. So thank you for listening to me prattle on.
No, it's great to hear from the front line, actually, and wonderful that people are so grateful to be getting the vaccination as well. You deserve the thanks for doing that.
It's just great to be doing it. It's just so nice to be doing something positive, as I say.
Yeah, well, fabulous. Thank you so much. That was really lovely to hear that. Thank you. So I'm going to okay, I see you've muted yourself. Brilliant. I'll remove your spotlight. There we are. So now we come on to Peter. I'm going to add you to the spotlight too, Peter. And if you can unmute yourself as well. I've asked you to unmute. Is that There we go. Well done. Fantastic. So Peter has been with the Chromatics online and has joined us since being online. And I hope that when we can all get back together again, you'll consider joining us in the flesh as well, Peter, because we'd love to have you. And Peter is our choir member in the spotlight today. So he's going to tell us, I think, about a favourite piece of music. So thank you, Peter.
Right. Can you all hear me okay?
Yep.
Good, excellent. I must make an apology first of all, because too late to do anything about it, but there seems to be more about me in this than there is about music, so apologies in advance. The greatest influence on my interest in music was probably my dad. He took me to Covent Garden when I was only 7 to watch my first opera, La Traviata. And I just remember both of us sitting there with tears pouring down our cheeks, and also being very embarrassed by him because he had one of these Ronson lighters with a gas flame, which if he opened it up would shoot up. And every time he wanted to read the synopsis, he would shoot up the flame, and everybody around us would get very, very angry, but that didn't deter him, I'm afraid. From there on, he used to take me down to Glyndebourne Festival every year to watch an opera. And that was in the old auditorium, which of course was terribly hot. And one used to watch the bats flying about. And in the second half, there used to be several elderly gentlemen who had really enjoyed their supper in the garden in the August sunshine, who either just fell asleep or had to be carried out of the auditorium. And as a family, we now go not to the festival, but every year we go off to the touring company. Sports tended to get in the way of my music, but I learnt and still play the piano. And I had a very brief and unsatisfactory relationship with the violin. And later in my life, as a part of a fundraising exercise organized by Nick Milner-Gulland, I took up the tenor sax. So I thought it was quite cool. This wasn't awfully popular with our Dandy Dinmont Terrier Crumpet, who used to howl even before I got the machine, or sorry, the instrument out of its case. I'll just mention one rather unfortunate crisis in my musical career, and that was when I was my first term at my prep school, when I was only about 7, playing in a concert, playing the piano, playing a tune called The Hornpipe. I'll never forget it. Everything just went blank, and I put my hands on the keyboard, looked at the music. Nothing meant any sense at all. And I returned to my seat less than 2 bars in, never to have another go at it. Probably affected me the rest of my life, I don't know. I love all sorts of music, apart from punk and heavy metal. I like Elvis Presley, Cliff Richard I enjoyed. I enjoy steel bands. I particularly enjoyed sort of syncopated piano music, Charlie Kuntz and the rest of them. By marrying a folk singer, I've learned to love that type of music also. I enjoy singing, and I've sung with the church choir, fetching singers, Fairfax singers, and of course now, hopefully, I say other than on a computer, the Chromatics. If I had to listen to a piece of music for 2 hours, I would probably listen to Puccini's La Bohème. It's full of the most beautiful arias, and I absolutely love it. It was the first opera I went to with my wife, Vicky, and we last saw it in Venice where there also Rosie and Nick and Joe and Damo were present at the Il Teatro La Fenice in Venice. But my choice just has to be Mozart. You can't beat the man. And if I was allowed to invite 2 or 3 people to a dinner party from the past, he would certainly be one of my guests. In 1989, I spent a lot of time driving up and down the M4, visiting my parents when my father was very unwell. And I played nothing but the tape of that wonderful film, Amadeus, over and over again. And the one piece of music which I found really unbelievably beautiful was the Lacrimosa from his Requiem in D minor. It was not, have I got to stop?
No. Sorry, I've just come in because I need to share the screen for the music. Although, yes.
Nearly done. I know it wasn't actually completed by Mozart himself before he died, but I think he'd planned it sufficiently well for one of his students to complete it as he would have wanted. So Lacrimosa by Mozart is my favorite piece of music.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So I'm going to mute you and remove the spotlight, and I'm going to share the screen so we can listen to your beautiful piece of music. And I just have to get rid of this. Honestly, the technology, eh? Anyway, here we go. Mm. Absolutely glorious. Yes, glorious. Thank you, Peter, for making that recommendation. I mean, the lacrimosa obviously means weeping, and don't you just hear that with the falling line of the violins? It's absolutely heartrending. Anyway, thank you for that. So now we're going to move on to Damo Greenish, and I've seen you somewhere, Damo. There you are. Hello. And are you able to unmute? There you go.
I'm unmuted.
And did you accept my request to be a co-host?
Oh my Lord, did I? I don't know.
Because otherwise you're not going to be able to share your screen. So let me...
Where did the request go?
I'll ask again if I can find you. Sorry, I did it during that performance. Ooh, where are you? Well, I tell you what. Oh, actually, you have co-host permission. I've just seen that. So you should be able to share your screen.
Right. How is that?
Perfect.
Can you see me?
Yes, we can't see you actually.
Oh, good. Well, that's the best thing. That's exactly what I wanted.
Okay, you've got 6 minutes.
I'm off. Okay. To understand a country, you need to go and visit it. What you read in the press is likely to give you a narrow and jaundiced view of what a country really is about. Simply reading and hearing about ruling elites and totalitarian regimes will give you little understanding of a country's culture and its people. And there is no better example of that than Iran. Few countries have had such a compelling history, thanks particularly to its strategic position straddling the trade routes between Europe and Asia. It's always been a melting pot of ideas, cultures, and crafts. It has a history of conquering and being conquered, and an ancient civilization, which is obvious even today. There are many misconceptions about the country. The current ruling Islamic regime is certainly cruel, aggressive, and surly. However, the ordinary people you meet are in complete contrast. Warm, friendly, and eminently hospitable. Many assume that Iranians are Arabs. They're not. They're Aryans. Their language is Farsi, it's not Arabic. You may be surprised to know there are, in fact, still Christian and Jewish communities within Iran that survive and practice their religion. Joe and I, in 2017, set off for a visit. We went as part of a group, as by then relations were such that it was the only way you could travel there. Our visit started in Shiraz, and is it moving the slides forward on your screen?
No, not yet. You should have at the bottom of your screen the option to move on. Or maybe if you click on the image.
I'm on my own. I'm moving, but not with you.
No. I can't help that, unfortunately. It's something you need to...
I need to sort out.
I can see your cursor. Oh, there we go. There we go.
Okay, we're there. Okay, so we went off as part of a group. By the relation was such the only way you could travel there. So our visit started in Shiraz in the south, then north to Persepolis, Yaz, Esfahan, and finally Tehran. It was an extraordinary journey, exploring religion, architecture, culture, art, music, and most importantly, meeting the people. Shiraz, synonymous with education, nightingales, poetry, and wine. It was one of the most important cities in the medieval Islamic world. It is home to splendid gardens and exquisite mosques. Mosques are a huge part, obviously, of Iran, as it is in many of that part of the world, and they are truly stunning. They're not just places of religious worship, they're places where people gather, meet, talk, eat, where whole families gather. And they're fascinated to see Europeans come there. This is a group you can see of school children crowding round Europeans, desperate to hear about Europe and what we think of them. Sometimes, although your head always has to be covered, for women it's tough. They have to wear, sometimes on the most prominent of the mosques, you have to cover up almost completely, as you can see here. I like the lady at the back with the rather quizzical smile on her face. And from there on to Persepolis, conceived by Darius the Great, who invited architects from the furthest corner of the Persian Empire to contribute to its construction. The result is an eclectic set of structures, including monumental staircases, exquisite reliefs, and imposing gateways. I kept the bloke at the bottom in the picture purely to give an indication of the size of these things, the size and absolute splendor of them. And then on to Yazd, a desert city steeped in the history of Zoroastrianism and its fire temples, the ancient religion of Persia, driven out by east to India when the Islam took over. And nicknamed the city of wind catchers. You see these towers, these slatted towers here. They're a very early form of ventilation. The winds come through that and ventilate the whole city. Magnificent Shah's palaces. They've not destroyed them. They've kept them and are very proud of them. Food, wonderful food. Typical Iranian dishes are combinations of rice with meat, vegetables and nuts. Herbs are frequently used along with fruits such as plums, pomegranates, quince, prunes, apricots, and raisins. Characteristic Iranian flavorings such as saffron, dried lime, and other sources of sour flavoring. Very welcome, as you can see. On to Esfahan, this magnificent city sitting on a river covered with wonderful bridges. I can't remember the name of this particular one, but bridges are another place where people meet, permanently meet, and where young couples can meet up in private to enjoy some private time together. Music is a huge part of Persian culture. This was an absolute wonderful recital given on ancient Persian instruments, utterly illegal, in fact, in Persia, because men and women are seen to be playing and singing together, but we were privileged to see it. Art. I've included this because this is a man painting on something the size of a thumbnail, probably with a brush that has a single hair. That's all there is. And within 5 minutes, he produces that. And finally, Tehran, hugging the lower slopes of the magnificent snow-capped Alborz Mountains, a chaotic jumble of concrete and crazy traffic, blanketed by a miasma of air pollution. And I included this last. Throughout where we went in Iran, we were constantly pestered for selfies. They all have mobile phones, and the one thing they all want is to have a photograph with a Westerner. And finally, on the last day, I turned the tables and said, right, if that's what you always want, I want it too, and I want a selfie with you. And you can see those faces, happy faces, not because they're living in a totalitarian regime, but because they really do quest for a future that they want to have.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
Thank you.
Okay, well, if you stop sharing your screen.
I will stop sharing my screen.
What an amazing trip you both had. And thank you. Those are wonderful photographs, Damo. Wonderful photographs. So thank you very much indeed. We are, look, already 8 o'clock. I'm so sorry, everybody. I'm going to remove the spotlight from Damo. And Damo, could you mute yourself? I'm sorry, I forgot to do it before I said goodbye to you. So we're now moving on to Dick Glynn-Jones. Now I just need to find you, Dick. I'm looking for you as we speak. Not so easy, hang on. I'm sure he'll wave at me and I'll see him. There he is, yes, great. There we are, Dick. So now you just need to unmute. So Dick is going to talk about quotations about music, and Dick himself, a retired teacher, has very much got the authority to talk to us on this subject. So thank you very much, Dick.
Well, Sara, I have not done anything dramatic or romantic or adventurous like our preceding speakers, but they were wonderful, weren't they? All I've done is to collect a few examples of the way poets and other writers down the ages have expressed their feelings about music. To start with Shakespeare, a very good place to start. Towards the end of The Merchant of Venice, there's a magical evening scene in which the young lovers Lorenzo and Jessica await Portia's return from Venice, where she has been defending Antonio against the dreaded Shylock. Lorenzo says, "How sweet the moonlight sleeps upon this bank. Here will we sit, and let the sounds of music creep in our ears. Soft stillness and the night become the touches of sweet harmony." You notice there's a phrase Rodgers and Hammerstein picked up for the title of their wonderful film, The Sound of Music, which opens with Maria singing, "The hills are alive with the sound of music, the songs they have sung for 1,000 years." Lorenzo goes on to say that even angry animals are calmed by the sweet power of music. Congreve later said much the same thing in the memorable line, "Music has charms to soothe a savage breast," as demonstrated by the Chromatics ladies, perhaps. Back to Lorenzo, who says, "The man that hath no music in himself is fit for treason, stratagems, and spoils. Let no such man be trusted." Twelfth Night opens with the lovesick and rather soppy Duke Orsino listening to his musicians and mooning, "If music be the food of love, play on. Give me excess of it, but surfeiting the appetite may sicken and so die." Not very complimentary about music, really. He hopes overdosing on music will cure the pains of passion. Silly man. Even more negative was Bernard Shaw in Man and Superman. "Hell is full of amateur musicians. Music is the brandy of the damned." And finally, forgive me, a saucy and scarcely relevant quotation. Here is Robert Helpman, the famous dancer and choreographer. "The trouble with new dancing is that not everything stops when the music stops." Cheers.
Cheers, Dick. Wonderful. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you very much indeed. So here we go. I am now going to share my screen. I need to find Nick Bowlby, who's going to tell us about a piece of art that means something to him. I can see you there. There we are. I will find the piece of art for you, Nick, as well. So I'm going to share my screen. Do you want to say hello to everybody first?
Yes, of course. Hello, everybody.
Because you'll disappear once you're...
Oh, I see. Yes. No, hello.
So hang on a minute.
Right. Do you want me to...
Hang on. Wait until I'm just going to share the screen. Just check it comes up. Yes, there it is. Okay. So the next... There we are. Now you can start.
Okay. Well, this, rather like my career, is a big black space in front of me, which I will try and navigate. But when you asked me for a special painting, so many came into my mind that it was difficult to decide. But I chose this one by Turner, called The Evening Star, which is in the National Gallery. When I was at school, a boarding school, at Exeats, I used to come up to London.
Oh,
I used to make a beeline to the gallery in order to see this painting, and it had an almost magical effect. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, you just dropped out for a second, but that's okay.
Okay, I'll carry on. So I would go and see this painting, and it had this almost magical effect on me, and I used to literally kind of think and dream about it for weeks before the start of the Exeat. I think I was born and brought up in Norfolk, and this is a picture of a wide open beach with a boy and a dog, and somewhere in that sky, you can see it if you look very closely. In the center at the top is the Northern Star. But it was something extraordinarily kind of romantic and moving to me. And once I'd seen it and kind of touch base, I could go back and cope with my mother. I shouldn't have said that.
Would you like to look at the next picture yet?
But it led me on to, does this remain constant? Does a painting like this? No, haven't quite finished. But I thought, does a painting like this remain constant? I mean, can you put a label on it like, this is my favorite painting? And 2 or 3 years ago, I went back to the National Gallery to see the Evening Star, not having seen it probably for a decade. And I sat in front of it, and whereas once upon a time as a teenager, I felt an enormous excitement seeing it again after a few weeks. This interval of 10 years, I sat in front of it for about 20 minutes, and I felt nothing to start with. By the end of the 20 minutes, I certainly did feel something, but it was very, very different to what I felt as a teenager. So the point I was making was that I had changed, the painting hadn't changed, and the idea of a favorite painting, I think, is probably mislabeled.
Yeah.
I think the paintings don't change, and you bring something to the painting every time you look at it again. Yes, go on to the next one. This is a masterpiece by my son who cooks. I asked him what it was. I think he was about 3 or 4 when he painted it or drew it. It's white chalk on black paper. He said it was an owl dancing, which of course it is. It is a very favorite painting of mine because it hangs in our bathroom. And when I have a bath, which is every other day, I look at it. And so it's a painting that's never, ever kind of bored me. It always makes me smile. I mean, that little smudge on the right dancing foot is a work of genius. And Roger Hilton of the St. Ives Group would be proud of it. So again, it's something that gets me through the day.
I think that's wonderful. And what child's painting of all of ours actually doesn't
exactly
instill that in us? Thank you so much, Nick. And I should have said to everybody that doesn't know you that you are, of course, a fine art dealer. So you really do know a lot about what you're saying. So thank you so much. Thank you. So now to move quickly on, we are going to have a little tiny, because I'm mindful of the time, but a tiny interlude. I'm going to share the screen and we're going to listen to a tiny bit of Flanders and Swann. I've just got to get out of this. Hang on. And out of that. Here we go. This is just to cheer you all up. It's about our weather.
January brings the snow.
Oh.
Makes your feet and fingers glow. February's ice and sleet. Freeze the toes right off your feet. Welcome March with wintry wind. Would thou wert not so unkind. April brings the sweet spring showers. On and on for hours and hours. Farmers fear unkindly May. Frost by night and hail by day. June just rains and never stops. 30 days and spoils the crops. In July the sun is hot. Is it shining? No, it's not. August cold and dank and wet. Brings more rain than any yet. Bleak September's mist and mud is enough to chill the blood. Then October adds a gale, wind and slush and rain and hail. dark November brings the fog, should not do it to a dog. Freezing wet December then, bloody January again.
There we are. Now I need to. So I'm just going to get out of that. Perfect. Good. So I just thought that was rather fun, actually, just to think about the weather as we come out of lockdown. And we've had the most glorious day. So in fact, everything's going to be absolutely fine. Now we have Peter Ross, I hope. I've got Peter Ross before Gabriella, I think. Nearly there, Gabriella. And I've got, where is Peter? There. Is that right? Hello, Peter. Just need you to unmute. There we go. Yes, done. Now, Peter is a retired chartered surveyor, but also clearly with the skill in singing, because we're going to hear Splish Splash, I was taking a bath. I shall put you in the spotlight and get out of your way. There we go. We're ready for you.
Anyway, good evening. This is with enormous apologies to everybody, but to bring the tone of evening down. Anyway, this is by courtesy of the estate of a late and very great Mr. Bobby Darren. And the song goes something like this. Splish, splash, I was taking a bath round about a Saturday night. Rubbed up, just relaxing in the tub, thinking everything was all right. Well, I stepped off the tub, I put my feet on the floor, I wrapped a towel around me and I opened the door, and then I splish splash, I hopped back in the bath. For I was at the know there was a party going on. I was a splishing and a splashing, rocking and a rolling. Dim dam, I saw the whole gang dancing on the living room rug. A bit bop, they were doing the bop, all the kids on the dancing floor. There was Lollipop and Miss Peggy Sue, and a golly Miss Molly was a grooving there too. And then splish splash, I forgot about my bath. I went to put my dancing shoes on. Splish splash. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Peter. That's wonderful. That's very much in the tradition of the Chromatics. Thank you very much indeed. So now we have Gabriella. So I need to find Gabriella. Where are you, Gabriella?
Oh.
You've unmuted and I can't see you yet. So, got you. Right. There we go. So Gabriella is a long-term member of the Chromatics. She's stuck with us throughout and it's fantastic. Thank you, Gabriella. Haven't been able to join us online, but that is completely fair enough. And we're looking forward to when we can all be back together again. So I'll leave it with you, Gabriella.
Well, that's because I can't read music. Sorry. But I can read. And I'm going to read to you a little extract from a book by Brian Sewell, who was the art critic of the Evening Standard. And one of his other great loves was dogs. This is the name of the book. And he always had a dog or several dogs. And as you can tell from the title, they weren't terribly well behaved. But anyway, one of the pluses of COVID is that an incident like the one he describes here couldn't happen now with social distancing. It's short. When we moved to a house in Kensington that had no garden other than a patio patch on the flat roof of the studio, there was a mad dash to Kensington Gardens at 6-ish every morning and at night. 6 dogs on leads, 3 in each hand, were perfectly manageable, provided that there was no distraction and no change in ritual. But one summer evening, on entering the gardens, to find too many sunbathers just within the gate, I decided that it might be wiser to walk a little further than usual before releasing them from their leads. They pulled and yelped, and an elderly woman carrying bags of shopping in both hands walked up to me and, with the seraphic countenance of a woman supremely confident that her intended interference will be welcomed, said, "I can help you to control your dogs." "I am perfectly in control," I responded. The dogs, 3 leads in each hand and looped, as was my precautionary habit, about my wrists, chose this very moment to change places from left to right and right to left, crossing my arms behind the old dame and compelling me to encircle her in a tight embrace, from which, her arms hanging straight to hold her shopping, she could not escape. And there we were, nose to nose at first, and then, as the dogs pulled harder, cheek to cheek, she walking very slowly backwards and me forwards, praying that we would not topple. Somehow I managed to slip the leads from my wrists, and away ran the dogs, releasing her without accident. And not since Mrs. Tiggywinkle scuttled naked away up the hill has any old lady vanished in so quick a trice.
Fantastic, Gabriella. Thank you so much. What a wonderful, wonderful image that is. Thank you so much. It's a wonderful way to near the end of our evening. So we have now Leslie. So I'm going to remove the spotlight. I'm going to look for Leslie Boase. Here she is. I can see her. There we are. Thank you, Leslie. So you're going to, you've titled your piece, Kiss Me Not.
That's true. Yes, to kiss or not to kiss, that is the question. Now, in normal times, when we finally get there, are you someone who likes to kiss every friend and every acquaintance? Or are you perhaps more select or even anti-kissing? Now, the poet Pam Ayres is definitely in the last category. So here is her plea in her poem, Don't Kiss Me. I want to ask a favour of the friends that I might meet, to all of my acquaintances who pass me in the street. Give me a cheery wave. Hello, how are you? Bye, so long. But don't kiss me. Please don't kiss me, for I always get it wrong. I do not want to do it. I would rather pass you by. I miss, you get a smacker on the ear or in the eye. I'm standing on the pavement thinking, blast, damnation, heck. He went the other way and I have kissed him on the neck. I find it so embarrassing. It makes my knuckles clench. It's a very dodgy habit we've imported from the French. What's wrong with, oh, good morning, or a handshake if you must, a lovely smile of welcome, oh, all right, a smile of lust. But I do not want to kiss you. I'm sure you're very nice, but I find it so confusing. Is it once or is it twice? I'm filled with apprehension and a feeling close to fright. Who leans forward first? Is it the left cheek first or right? And I feel a strange awareness as we stand around and speak that there's a disconcerting trace of your saliva on my cheek. So don't kiss me. No, don't kiss me. Say, enchanté. Ciao. Good health. But I'm telling you, don't kiss me. Keep your choppers to yourself. Oh, don't kiss me. I implore you. I cannot stand the strain. I seldom kiss my husband. You don't hear him complain. So, au revoir, auf Wiedersehen. Just tell me that you'll miss me. But please, if we should meet again, don't pucker up, don't kiss me.
I think that's wonderful. Thank you too. I think it's the one thing everybody is going to want to do, aren't they?
Remember how to do it.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Leslie. That was wonderful. So we're coming to the end. I'm sorry it's run on so, but what we're going to do now is we are going to have the Chromatics favourite, The Rhythm of Life. And we have Caroline here, who I'm going to add, and you're unmuted, Caroline. So what we'll do is we'll play through The Rhythm of Life as if we were singing it. I don't know if you remember what you do. If you just want to listen, perfect. Otherwise, you sing through it all once, and then you go back to the chorus with one part of the group singing to, what is that last bit? To one group singing To Feel the Rhythm of Life, and the other singing And the Rhythm of Life is a Powerful Beat. And then what I'll do is I'll say goodbye, and then we'll go into the Alleluia chorus, and those that want to go can whilst the Alleluia chorus is on. But thank you so much, Caroline. Thank you, Caroline. Great. Thank you. So I shall now remove the spotlight from you. So the very last thing is the Alleluia chorus. And some of you have got the music, and some of you might just want to listen, or if you've had enough, just disappear into the night. This was by way of a tribute to the Oxford vaccine team, and it was Anna Milner-Gallen that highlighted this concert for me. It was on before Christmas, and what more perfect way really to end the evening and to celebrate Easter too. It was written in 1741, first performed in Dublin. King George II stood during the Alleluia chorus, and since then a lot of audiences stand too when the Alleluia chorus begins. I'm not suggesting you do that, but he stood, we think, because he recognized there was a greater God than him. So there you are. So good night, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us. And yes, wish you all a wonderful Easter too. So let me find, here we are. Just have to
keep going through all of this. Without this team effort, we would not have got where we are today.
Now triumph and celebration ring out in the Hallelujah chorus from the 1741 oratorio by Handel, Messiah. As each new day dawns, a new breakthrough comes.
For the Lord
Wonderful. Good night, everybody. And thank you so much for joining us. Do, if you want to unmute and just say goodbye, fine. Otherwise, I shall just end the meeting. But hope to see you all in September. Stay, you know, in touch. Yeah, so that so that we can see whether we can meet or not. Who knows? Anyway, take care, everybody.
Sarah, thank you.
Happy Easter.
Bye.
Happy Easter, everybody.